Hello, thank you for having me here. I'm a teeny tiny bit nervous, so if I speak too fast, please let me know. I don't know how you're going to do that, but just do it. My name is Nina Liu, I'm 28, and I am the sound designer and co-host of Splittet til Atomer, also translated to Split into Atoms. Next slide. I had a bachelor in sound design 2020, and I mainly work with sound design podcasting in the Danish Broadcasting Corporation. I'm also a student at the Rhythmical Music Conservatory. That's hard to say. A Rhythmic Music Conservatory. Yeah, that's it. Where I'm getting into what it means to be an artist, and this goes very well hand in hand with Splittet til Atomer, Split into Atoms, because it's a music podcast. Yes, and the podcast dives into settled and upcoming Danish artists, hosted by Sarah Frost. She does all the interviewing and the storytelling and the build-up and the speak. And the podcast mainly focus on artists and how they write and compose their music, because usually there's a story behind how they create a track. Sometimes it's very dramatic, and sometimes it's just going down to the studio and doing the thing, and that can be challenging to create a story from that. But we have another part of the podcast, which is like an informal analysis of a track. So if you look at the slide here in the background, there's something we call waveforms, which is the instruments of all the different instruments in the track. And that's my job, to dive into this and analyze together with Sarah. And we do that in a conversation bit of the podcast. And it can vary from like very, very nerdy to just informal and good company. Another part of the podcast is these very, very sound designed scenes. So Sarah does the interview in past tense. So I'm kind of able to do this short movie scenes, almost both abstract and literal sound design, like footsteps or atmosphere, and so on and so on. Then we also have a part we like to call we like to call it the musical staircase, because it's always really nice to hear a song that you know very well torn apart from all the different instruments. You don't get to do that a lot. And this is inspired by Song Exploder, if you heard that podcast ever. If you haven't heard it, I would really recommend you to listen to that. We don't always have the same build-up in our stories, because it varies what the artist has to say. So here's just like a little overview of what our podcast usually consists of. We always begin, though, with the same thing, that we hear a snippet of the song, and a bit of the climax in the interview, or just like a funny moment or something. So we have the premise up front, which is inspired by the Netflix Dragon model. I don't know if you heard about that one, but that is very hip. So premise up front, that the young audience likes that. Then we move on to the introduction by the host, a bit with interviews and scenes, and then we go into conversation. We hear the staircase, and back to interviews and scenes again. Sometimes conversation part 2, interviews and scenes, and then it's over. And I brought an example that you can hear. It's a song in English. It's called Starry Shower of Snow by Mads Langer. And here you can just hear what it's like when it goes from an interview into something very emotional.
Det er sommer, solen skinner, jeg går rundt i shorts og sådan skal prøve at finde frem til en julestemning i mig. Den skal jeg finde i mig selv.
Mads tænker over, hvad jul er for ham.
For mig er jul forbundet med at komme hjem i Resen Vest uden for Skive, hvor jeg voksede op. i virkeligheden sådan lidt komme ned i det tempo, jeg har det bedst i. Mødes med min familie, men også mine gamle venner fra Skive. Og så mærke det der med, okay, jeg har det ikke godt.
Der er plads og tid til at mærke efter. Julen for Mads er flere ting. Og det skal den her sang indeholde.
Hvordan kan jeg prøve at strukturere et musikalsk univers, der har begge sider? Det, der sker for mig, det er, at jeg går på sådan en indre gåtur. Helt klar vinteraften. Uden for Skive ved Flyndersø, hvor jeg altid er ude, når det er jul og koldt og klart. Og så er jeg i den der stemning af, hvad det er. At gå ud om aftenen og kigge op på stjernehimlen. Den er anderledes ude på landet, end den er i byen. Man kan simpelthen bare se mange flere stjerner. Jeg var en lille brik i noget meget større. Den der indre gåtur, den sådan sætter retningen for ordene til teksten. At stjernerne på en eller anden måde bliver til sne. En stjerneregn af sne. Der er der ro. Og der er alting ret simpelt.
Lad os dykke ned i, hvordan man kan høre den her indre gåtur under stjernerne i musikken. Hvad gør Mads Langer i en stjerneregn af sne til at være et julenummer, vi ikke bare lægger på hylden igen?
Der er nogle forskellige ting, som gør, at den har det der magiske udtryk. Medianspring.
Mm-hmm.
Vi kender det fra film. For eksempel James Bond-temaet. Medianspring. Ringenes Herre. Lad os lige høre, hvor der bliver lavet et medianspring i den her sang.
Drømmer vi nu, eller glemmer vi blot, at vi...
Her der går den fra D-dur til F-dur. Når du tager en D-dur, er den midterste tone et fis. Grundtonen i den næste akkord er så et F, så den springer det, der hedder en lille terts. Og det kalder man altså et medianspring.
På en eller anden måde har vi vendet os til, at det tager os med ind i et univers.
Ja, det kommer egentlig helt tilbage fra romantikken. Et ret kendt eksempel er Debussys komposition En favns eftermiddag, som er skrevet helt tilbage i 1894. Meget eventyrligt. Yes, very magical. So here you get an idea of what the podcast is. It's really like a mix of storytelling and a lot of nerding in a studio with music theory. And my work in the podcast, of course, is doing the sound design. It's very important for us to have something to support all these interviews with, because it's not always that the artist wants to not work with us, but are able to go into the feeling they had when they wrote this. And there's a lot of background music as well, like ambient electronic music that transport the story. So there's never really a completely quiet moment. There's not a lot of silence, but there's a lot of space in the music. And Sarah helps me conveying music theory, because sometimes it can get a little nerdy, and she's this curious person who has a lot of knowledge about music as well, and that becomes sort of like a little comic relief. I'm not going to talk about mix because that's boring. Next. This is not right.
Sorry.
there's a slide missing. I'm just gonna sum up what the reason why I think it works. We have a lot of different elements all the time. There's variation. It's a very short format. It's only 15 to 30 minutes, and you always hear something new all the time, so it's very difficult to get bored because we're serving something new. This doesn't mean that it's a extremely quick podcast. It's not like TikTok because it's not pictures. We decode sound way slower than we decode like an object. If you look at a bottle, then you know, oh, this is a bottle. But if you hear it, it will take you some time to decode it. So I kind of always move a bit slow. That's a principle for me. I think a reason also is we work with artists that a lot of younger listeners really like to hear. When that is said, we also have some older, like some tracks that was really big in the 2000s. I think also the conversational part is something that really works because Sarah and I didn't know each other from the beginning, and I didn't have any host training, radio training at all, but we just had the best chemistry, and I really believe that shines through. So I think picking different profiles and taking some chances is a really good thing as well. And then as I mentioned, heavy on the sound design, it creates a lot of dynamic and small explosions to capture if the focus is drifting. It's always a good thing to have interesting music in the background that also drives the story. Another thing that really is important for us is that we don't over-explain. People can Google stuff if they want to, because they have a phone all the time. And usually we have a lot of things that we don't elaborate. So you can choose that as a listener. Then, of course, Sarah as a host isn't like super dominating in the story. She helps it along very gracefully, and it's only about the music and a good company. I have a last example if you want to hear. I don't know, is it working if I just do this?
Der er egentlig en oprindelig version, de har det godt med. Det sidste af den skriver de hos Pernille.
Jeg er lige gået fra en kæreste, og er i den der transitionsperiode, hvor at man ikke rigtig har noget ordentligt sted at bo. Jeg har et mikroskopisk soveværelse på 5-6 kvadratmeter, hvor der ligger en madras på gulvet.
Vi sidder på den her madras med akustisk guitar. Sangen den går i D-mol. Verset er sådan lidt melankolsk i det. Vi vil gerne op og få gang i noget dur.
Ding, 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 ding.
Vi skriver det bare sådan på 10 minutter eller sådan noget, det der.
Da vi sidder her og kigger på hinanden og siger sådan, der er en verden ude på den anden side, rent musikalsk, som er meget sjov egentlig at gå rundt i.
Den her nye verden, de befinder sig i, er en ny lyd, en mindre inderlig lyd, end de er vant til. De vil nemlig gerne blive ved med at lave musik sammen, og for at kunne det, har de brug for at udvikle sig.
Yes, that's it for me. Thank you for listening.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Marlies. I'm from Q Music, a Dutch national commercial radio. And I want to talk today about the Q Escape Room. This is a promotion that we work on 10 months a year. And it's a promotion that involved last year more than 70 puzzles. A promotion where we lock up DJs in an escape room that we build ourselves. That is the Q Escape Room. Last December, there were 4 DJs locked up for 7 days. And they could only escape if they solved the musical code. And this was the musical code.
Dit is de muzikale code. Matti. Domin. Kai. Bram.
Puzzel mee en volg alles via qmusic.nl en de Q-app.
I will let you hear the answer at the end of the presentation. If someone has the correct answer, you win a prize. The concept is quite simple. We build an escape room. We build it ourselves, and we give our DJs a musical code, and the puzzles inside the Q escape room help them solve it. There's a radio studio in the escape room, and we make radio from 6 a.m. until 8 p.m. After that, the DJs can relax and sleep in the escape room until they try the next day. I want to show you how we work and produce a great promotion on radio and social media. In 2020, we choose a new theme for the escape room, and this was a record store. In this video, you see the 4 DJs looking at the interior for the first time.
Ik hoop wel dat ze in ieder geval misschien voor de gezelligheid een klein kerstboompje hebben neergezet. Zo! Wauw.
We staan in een soort record store.
Cool zeg. Ja, dit ziet er zo mooi uit.
Wat vet!
Wat dik, jongen.
Hier ben ik echt graag een week.
Ik ook.
Well, they said it on the first day. In 2021, we built our own museum. And beside a central room where the radio studio was built, there were more rooms, connecting areas, and not all were accessible for the DJs. Some of them were a part of the puzzle, and they had to unlock it to get in. Everywhere they look, they can find clues or puzzles that will help them find the escape. The only question is where to start. I want to show you the pictures of our floor plan. That will give you a good idea of the scale of this escape room. You also see why we spent almost a year building this. And we start with a theme and a musical code, and then we decide where we're going to build this escape room. It's not open for the public, and we don't give away the location, because really that doesn't matter. It's creating a theater of the mind. We are creating a new world for the DJs. You see on the details of the floor plan, of course, the connecting rooms, but also the rooms where they sleep. People ask us, why do they really stay in the escape room during the night? And yes, they do. There's a shower, there's a kitchen, there's a place where they can hang out after the hours on radio. We once talked about letting them stay in a hotel nearby because we didn't have enough room for all our ideas. And we didn't do it, and we're glad we didn't, because the first DJ starts breakfast at 6 o'clock, and the other DJs woke up after this, and they walk in their pajamas. And can you imagine what a great social content that is, if you have your DJs walk in their pajamas and having breakfast before the cameras and live on the radio? In 2022, so last year, we did also an escape room, and this is the moment where the DJs hear their musical code for the first time.
Het is zover. Luister goed. Dit is de muzikale code. Matti. Domin. Kai. Bram. De eerste ontsnappoging is morgenochtend om 7:15.
Ja, ik dacht zeg maar dat ik na 3 escape rooms een soort van geoefend gehoor had gekregen op die fragmenten. Nou, kan je vertellen, dat heb ik niet.
This is also the moment where listeners get really involved and they come up with theories and possible answers. So last year in December, we created Santa's House, and designing this escape room was a blast. Because this promotion is in December, we can really adapt the feeling of the season into this escape room. I always get a little bit sick when I watch this video, so I hope you're okay with this. We had more rooms than ever. I will show you the floor plan. Look at this. You can see where they sleep and you can see all the extra rooms. And people ask us, why don't you just hire escape room builders? Why are you working 10 months a year on this project? And to be honest, we work with the best production company that makes everything that we think of. But the big difference between a normal escape room and this escape room is that we make radio, we make video content. And a normal escape room is built for a time slot with different people every 4 hours. And our DJs stay in this escape room up to 7 days, like last year. We work with a team that includes radio, social, and video experts. And of course, our imaging team, our marketing team, our technical team. And we create a team of experts. And with the production company, we work on the content. It doesn't start with radio. It doesn't start with marketing. It doesn't start with video. It starts with a musical code and a team. And then everybody can go crazy. One of us said, okay, we want to do something with water. Okay, we're going to see if that's possible. Someone else said, he's in the audience right now, I want someone hanging from the ceiling like a Mission Impossible film. Okay, we couldn't afford it, but the idea was really good. During the escape room, we broadcast live between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m. The DJs are allowed to work on the puzzles and solve the musical code between 8 a.m. and 7 p.m. And during breakfast, we recap the previous day, and the DJs wake up and they discuss their tactics for that day. And there are 3 moments where they can escape during the day. The first one is a 8:15, the second one is a 12:15, and the last one is a 5:15. So if they miss the 5:15 escape at them, they know that they will be sleeping in the escape and have to try again the next morning at a 8:15. When they give their answers, they only hear how many answers are correct, not which one. This is one of the attempts.
DJ's, ik wil nu van jullie de muzikale code weten. Matti.
Voordat we verder gaan, die 2 van de 4 gaan we wel echt lekker vieren. Hè?
Absoluut.
Oké.
Absoluut.
Dan ga ik voor het volgende liedje. Ik heb namelijk nog geen enkele aanknopingspunt of hint dan wel. Nou, noem maar op. Ik vul gewoon een van mijn favoriete liedjes ooit in de Goo Goo Dolls met Iris.
Domien.
We hebben er heel lang over moeten nadenken. We hebben 2 pogingen gehad waarvan we het ook zeker wisten. Maar nu weten we het echt zeker. Het David Guetta-spoor klopte al langer. Daar is Rihanna vanmorgen bij om de hoek komen kijken. Mijn antwoord, David Guetta en Rihanna. En Who's That Chick?
Kai.
Ja, en we hadden voor mijn spoor hier in ieder geval koekoeksklokken hangen... die we hebben opgewonden met een hele grote sleutel... waardoor we oehoe hoorden en allemaal nummers uit Engeland. Ik ga voor Bad Habits van Ed Sheeran.
Bram.
En tot slot het zekerheidje waarvan we zeker wisten dat hij goed was. Dit is natuurlijk Get Spanish van de jeugd van tegenwoordig.
Nou, het kan hè? Ja.
Ik heb jullie antwoorden gehoord.
Spannend.
De muzikale code is niet gekraakt.
Oké. Maar.
Jullie hebben 2 antwoorden goed.
So they have to get the other 2, but they're happy. You can hear when they are giving their answers, they're also looking back to all the clues and the puzzles that they got during the day or the days, so that they can help the listeners understand why they choose a particular song. While we're working on the puzzles, we do it from two different angles. First of all, you have the puzzle track with information that will lead to the musical code. Let's say one of the DJs says ABBA with "Thank you for the music." In our brainstorm, we analyze the song and the artists. So for ABBA, we can give clues about the fact that it's a group, that there are male and female members in the group, that we can talk about Sweden, Europe, and with the song, you can go to the Eurovision Song Contest, or you can talk about different styles of music. And also, we have practical puzzles that need to be solved to get the information. And sometimes the way the puzzle is being built or executed is also a clue. And sometimes we just make a fun puzzle that leads to the next puzzle. Listeners are really committed to this promotion, and they are not sure on which side they are on. Yes, they want to help the DJs, but if they do, the DJs will escape quickly, and they don't want that. They love to see the DJ struggle. We know that if you show a puzzle or tell about it on air, people immediately will start helping. That's why we carefully choose which puzzles the DJs have to solve themselves and when the listeners can join. We used a life-size memory game that revealed the city of London. We also did a treasure hunt across the country and used geomapping. And you can see that the listeners have to go into the Netherlands and help them escape. We needed to guide the DJs and the listeners during the escape room. So we came up with the puzzle master, a guiding voice, and we call him the puzzle master. And this is what happens when you break the rules.
Wat ik ook zat te denken. Die band. Ja. Dat is een ingang voor spullen. Nou, misschien is het ook wel een uitgang. Zal ik het even proberen? Nou, maar we moeten af en toe even iets doen. Wat? Ik ga kijken, waarom hebben we dit nog niet eerder geprobeerd? Misschien is dit wel een doorgang. Een doorgang naar achter. Naar een nieuwe ruimte.
Nou, je houdt hem niet tegen, man.
Mijn snor staat rebels.
Ik steun je hierin. Het is al gebeurd. Het is al gebeurd. Kom maar. Maar misschien moet je...
Mattie, Domien, Kai en Bram. Dit is een officiële waarschuwing. Jullie overtreden mijn regels. Stop hier direct mee.
Oké.
Nou, jeetje. Ik was er al bang voor.
So this was during this song, so we had to stop playing the music and had to go back to the escape room and talk about this. And yes, we told them that they can't do it during commercial or news because we can't interrupt that. So the puzzle master gave us the ability to create more storylines in the escape room. We added the pressure room. If you fail this assignment, the DJs will lose the next attempt to escape. So the pressure is really on the DJ that enters the pressure room. And we have so much fun creating this.
Nee. Oh, dit is hem. Oh, fuck.
Is dit hem? Ja, het is hem.
Degene die de pressure room moet betreden...
Ik wil niet. Ik ook niet. Ik wil niet.
Mattie.
Nee, ik wil niet.
Succes zometeen.
Ik wil niet.
Jouw opdracht is om binnen 15 seconden... met je handen 250 ballen uit een bak te verwijderen. Je mag de bak niet omgooien. Simpel toch? Succes.
Oké, ik ga alles doen, jongens.
Ja, vol erin.
3, 2, 1, start.
Ja, juist, ja. Goed, man. Alles eruit. Supergoed, man. Lekker, supergoed. Oh, nee! Nee, joh!
De opdracht is mislukt. Jullie volgende ontsnappoging komt te vervallen.
Oh, wat is dit?
Nou, dit zijn echt sadistische opdrachten.
Wat is dit voor sadisme?
Oh, jongens, ik heb alles gegeven.
I can talk all day about this promotion. I mean, it's a crazy ride for 10 months, and then seeing the DJs perform like this, it's amazing. Okay, so let's focus on radio. We make puzzle tracks to help the DJs get closer to the musical codes, but the tracks also help us make a rundown for the radio show. While we can create more puzzles and more content during breakfast and drive, we need more simple puzzles during the music-driven shows. And after the escape, we do a reunion show in breakfast or in drive. So the DJs can talk about their experience, and we listen to clues they have missed. And we listen to the best bits, of course. And the puzzle master also gives a roundup for every DJ. And she will be honest, and if they messed up, she will let them know. And if you look at our social strategy, when we announce a new edition, we also have a social strategy next to our radio strategy waiting. So last year we did a series where the DJs were looking back at old clips and discussing their tactics for the upcoming promotion, because really they don't learn. They make the same mistake every year, and we're saying, well, you can evolve, you can do better, but they never do. So during the escape room, we have a live feed on our app and on our website, and we have a daily recap on YouTube. We, of course, have content for all our social platforms, and we also make unique content for the personal accounts of the DJs. And to be honest, TikTok is a great addition to this, because you can use content out of context, you can create funny bits, and that will make the Q Escape Room timeless.
I can't believe that it's finally me and you and me, just us and your friend Steve. Do Steve. Do.
Nee. Ik wil het niet boven me hebben. Hou op hiermee. Ed Sheeran en John McHugh Music Star Walking op de... Zometeen, dag.
Jee,
niet normaal.
Dat is toch niet normaal?
So, quick look at the numbers. We had an increase in market share of 11%, and we had a 45% increase in time spent listening. And you can see an increase in all platforms during last year's edition. It was the best rated promotion. Okay, remember the musical code at the beginning? Let's listen to the answer.
Dit is de muzikale code. Mattie.
6th day of Christmas, my baby gave to me a crop jacket with dirty denim jeans.
Domien.
I just wanna dance.
Kai.
Hola, supermercado de la bancos por aquí. Let's get Spanish.
So the last one was a Dutch song, so I understand if you don't know that one. It all comes down to this. Create a promotion that starts with a content idea, and not just with a radio idea or a social idea. And create a team of experts in which all members are equal. Everyone has the same goal. You want to create the best content. And make a plan for clients and sponsorship. The earlier a client gets on board, the more visibility we can create for the sponsor. Create content for audience participation. They are your fans. Make sure you have enough content just for them. Thank you.
So, hi, my name is Ivana. I work as online marketing manager in Czech radio. I'm like super nervous, and as you can see. Also, English is not my first language, as you can all hear. And also, I will present a project or idea which is definitely not that sophisticated, not that expensive, and not that well thought as all the other two projects which you've seen before. So I hope that was a good starter. Anyway, this meeting should be about content which is for youth audience or young people, which is kind of surprising for me because I don't consider myself young anymore. I think once you start saying old, like age is just a number or age is a social construct, that means you are old. And that is something what I say quite often. So the thing about, I want to say a few words, is a podcast which was created for Czech radio for the station which is called Radio Wave, which is a station which is oriented on young people. So definitely like younger people than me. And the podcast, its name is butchy, which is like a word play, which I will not explain because you will all leave soon. But it means something like cakes, but also in Czech it's like a name for women or like girls. Butchy is like one of the most popular comedy podcasts since 2018. It's usually in top 10 most favorite Czech radio podcasts. It won the award Podcast of the Year last year, so I don't think we will win anything this year. And most of our listeners are between age 23 and 34, which means some of them can be my kids. I don't know if you would be listening to your mom's podcasts. I definitely wouldn't. So what is the key to success? I don't know. But in the end of my presentation, if you will stay here, I will try to give you some answers. So how the podcast started. Actually, most of our listeners think that we are very good friends with my colleague. Her name is Zuzana Fuchsová. And she is from Brno, which is something like smaller Prague, but far away. And people from Prague usually make fun of the people from Brno, so that's why she's not here. But actually, many people think that we were very good friends from the beginning, and that we came up with the idea of the podcast, and that we pitched it to the Radio Wave. But that was not the case. Actually, the podcast is like artificially made. Radio Wave came to me and then to Zuzana, and they told us that they have an idea of a podcast which they named something like Girl Talk or Pillow Talk, that it should be like two women or people who identify themselves as women talking about something, and that it should be funny and interesting. So I was kind of skeptical, and I didn't know Zuzana at all, but they said, well, just make a pilot and we will see. So like we, as two strangers, went to the studio. We were randomly talking about something, which was, I think at that time, like traveling alone. I thought that was like super terrible and super boring, but Radio Wave said like that's exactly like what it should be. So that's how the podcast started. The concept, like we didn't really have any concept, and we even don't have any concept till now, but that's our concept, that we always say like we don't have any concept. So also it's kind of an excuse for everything. So we don't have any concept. But in the beginning, it was just two of us talking about like random topics. It was something like if you would be sitting in a coffee shop and you would be listening to someone who is kind of like weird but interesting and maybe a little bit funny, but like not that much, but you still have to keep listening. So that's something like what the concept was. Then we also started to inviting our friends to the show. And then people started to invite themselves to our show. That's something I will talk about later. But the concept, maybe we have some concept. We don't usually invite like famous people or people who do something which is considered like interesting. We just like invite normal people or like, or people who invite themselves. So, because we think like there are many interview podcasts with like celebrities or like famous people or like whatever, so we don't need to make another podcast like this. So that's why we make podcast about nothing and everything. We also say that there are no unimportant topics. So we basically talk about everything from why young people collect old things, why we hate cleaning, about tarot cards, middle age crisis, psychotherapy, like how to understand or not understand contemporary art, ethical hacking, smells, our invisible friends also, annoying motivational quotes like coaching, life goals. We don't avoid like heavy topics, like serious illness or stuff like that, but we still try to somehow handle it in a not like light-hearted way, but we are not like experts, so we try to like stay on the note as if you are talking to someone in a pub or in a coffee place. To each episode we have a special like picture, you can call it, which we use for the website of Czech Radio, and we also use it for the Czech Radio application. But to the like so-called third parties like Spotify and Apple Podcast, we only use still the same like cover design of our podcast. Where do people listen to us? Now it's kind of like boring, like infographics, but like you can like watch from the window or just pretend you are listening. Like young people usually don't use in Czech Republic that much the platforms of the Czech Radio because, and that's like my personal opinion, it can be kind of like barrier for them, or it's like not a native like habitat for them. Czech Radio website or Czech Radio application, because it usually also contains a lot of content which is for like older listeners. So most of our people these days listen to us at Spotify. It's like more than a half of the listeners. Then there is a big chunk of people who listen on Apple Podcast, but as you can see, almost like third of the younger listeners are using Czech Radio platforms, which is today like our website and our cell phone app, which is called Můj rozhlas. And I recommend all the Czech speakers here to download it because it's really good. Who is listening? Here you can see, because this should be like a presentation for content for young audience. So you can see there are like some young people who are listening to it. This infographic is from Spotify, so most of the people who are listening are between ages 23 and 34. Most of the listeners are women or people who identify themselves as women. I'm not surprised because I think our cover art is pink and there's like 2 women on it. And I don't believe in stereotypes, but they still kind of work. So it's probably mostly appealing to women. And here is a super boring infographic, but it demonstrates how loyal our audience is, because I think our podcast is something like love or hate, because people either love it or they just say like, we can seriously like listen to it. Like I've tried like 5 minutes and it's just like terrible. So there's like no one who is, for example, deciding if he wants to listen based on what the topic is. People who start listening to our podcast usually finish till the end. As you can see, that's like an infographic of like average episode. We started with approximately 20-minute long episodes, but then people started writing us that we should do like longer episodes. And also maybe as we get older, we have more to say, or I don't know. So now usually the episodes are 30 to 50 minutes long, and people are still listening till the end. Well, I myself am like surprised why people are actually listening to the podcast sometimes. So I made a like professional research on our Instagram. So I asked people why they are actually listening to the podcast. I got like hundreds of messages, and I professionally divided them into like some categories, because people were usually like saying the same but in a different kind of words. So here you can see most of the reasons why people are listening to a podcast which is about nothing. So they say, I feel like you are my friends. When I'm listening to you, I don't feel lonely. That was quite like often answer. It helps me when I feel sad. It's relaxing. It's funny. You are authentic and relatable. You ask unexpected questions, which I think can be a euphemism for like stupid questions, which we also ask because we are not afraid. And you mention interesting facts and true stories from your life, which is true. We usually tell a lot from our personal lives, and some listeners, when they meet us then in the real life, they are surprised that we are actually the same as we are in the podcast. Also, some people then complain that we were like saying some private stories from their lives, which sometimes happen, but we don't usually mention the names. Few years ago, because in the beginning, we were only saying my email address in the podcast, like my work email address, as a mean of contact. But then I started to receive like very many emails which were not connected to my main work as an online marketing manager. So we started our own Instagram, which is only managed by me because my colleague usually keeps forgetting the password, and she's also like kind of lazy. So don't tell her. No, it's mainly about the password issue. So actually I am managing the Instagram where people can contact us. We got a lot of DMs, like it's more, usually even more than 20 DMs per day. And potential guests started to invite themselves via our Instagram. So we don't actually invite any people. We are not even like searching for the guests. Now we have a professional Google Excel sheet full of guests, and it's full till the end of August. And how it works, like people usually write us via DM that they like this topic, which can be, for example, Polish food or Hungarian music or whatever, and that they are listening to the podcast and that they would really like to come, and then we usually invite them. Also, some people are writing us that their friends are listening to Butchy and they want to give them a visit in our podcast as a birthday gift, which we also sometimes do. And there was a couple who got actually this like attention, or like who got to Butchy as a wedding gift. So it was like a couple who was happily married. I hope they still are, even after the visit in our podcast. Also, people share with us a lot of like personal stories, like funny ones, sometimes not even like funny ones. They send us like inside jokes, which are connected to our podcast, or like funny pictures and stuff. So Instagram like really works for us. I don't think, for example, we could use TikTok because I'm not a native like TikTok user. Like I used to have a TikTok as every old person who wants to feel young, but it's not like a native platform for me. So maybe that can be like an advice, like use, like if we are talking about social media, use a platform which is like native for you. Otherwise you will look like kind of cringe or whatever. One like additional thing which we started to do a few years ago is like live events that we usually invite, or some guests invite himself or herself, and we make a live event somewhere like either outdoors or indoors. We actually made also like one live event during COVID times. My colleague was at that time in the quarantine, but actually the technicians managed somehow to like connect her via her cell phone to that live event, and we put her on this like beautiful like paper something, so she was there also present. Here are some pictures where is a lot of people, so you can really see that the podcast is famous. That's why I've also chosen the pictures. And this is our merch. Actually, we didn't have a concept, and we also didn't have a claim except of this, like it's a podcast about nothing and everything. And then somehow along the way, a motivational or like unmotivational quote came up, like set the bar low and you will always jump over it. And then we printed this like motivational quote on t-shirts, and actually people are like wearing them. Actually, on this picture is a speaker of Czech army who was also like guest in our podcast, and he really wanted to have this motivational quote t-shirt, so he has it now. Actually, that can be also like my advice or like the answer to the question, what is the key to success of our podcast about nothing? I really think it's like set the bar low and you will always like jump over it, because sometimes when you are like over trying, especially in comedy field, or you are like being an overachiever, it doesn't work out, or it might come up like really bad or not funny. So we are having the bar on the floor, and it still works. Also, we are really authentic. We also don't take making this podcast as our job. For us, it's like a hobby. We usually record it during weekends, and I seriously don't take it as a job, but as something what I really like. We are not trying too hard. We are kind of trying. We are not afraid to ask stupid questions. Also, we are not afraid to make fun of ourselves. We are not afraid to say that we don't know things or that we don't understand things. So we are not pretending to be smarter than what we are. And also we try to treat all our listeners as our friends. And we are like really thankful that we managed to make such a community which is listening to the podcast about nothing. And these people are like younger than us, which is good. So thank you for like listening to me. If you are a Czech speaker or you want to learn Czech, listen to podcast Butchy or follow us on our Instagram. Or if you want to email me, there is my email down there. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Ivana. That was really, really good. And I have to say, I'm skitting laughing, and I'm very upset that I can't listen to an English language version of Butchy. Has anybody any questions for any of our speakers before we move on? Anybody want to put their hand in the air to ask Marlies or Nina or Ivana any? No? Well, then I will say thank you so much and well done. Next up is a session here from Shoutcast. So we will see you then. And thank you once again to our speakers.